Good afternoon, everybody. Do you hear me? The HTF task force is about to finish. Mr. de Mistura and Mr. O'Brien will be on their way to brief you. We are privileged, actually, to have with us today Mr. O'Brien, who is the USG for Humanitarian Affairs and the Emergency Relief Coordinator. He has, of course, he has been closely following the HTF and giving it its full support. He will take the opportunity today to brief you, and of course you will have the opportunity to ask questions. I would kindly ask you please to switch your mobiles off or put them on silent mode, and do please introduce yourselves and to whom your question is addressed when posing your question. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I thought you were all somewhere else, actually, but obviously, anyway, thank you for being here, and let me warmly welcome Stephen O'Brien, who is very well known to all of you. As you know, he's the Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and is the UN Emergency Relief Coordinator, and in fact representing the neutral, independent UN humanitarian actions in Syria. And we'll take advantage, definitely, of this opportunity for being able to also address in a very comprehensive way the issue about humanitarian actions in Syria. Stephen O'Brien was with us during the whole HTF. Before doing so, because this is the opportunity of giving you much more time, let me focus for a moment on the political aspect. You know that the two co-chairs at the senior level, both at the US and Russia, Sergei Lavrov on the Russian Federation side and John Kerry on the US side, are meeting and are constantly meeting. We are all hoping for positive conclusions. Let's be frank, the discussions are addressing complex, delicate, difficult issues, and they have just been resuming again about 25 minutes ago. But if they do succeed, and the UN has been actively involved in supporting those discussions, and hopefully also in supporting their conclusions, the conclusions could make, let's be frank, a major difference. One on the renewal or relaunching of cessation of hostilities, which in turn, unavoidably, since the problems in Syria are not caused by rain, lack of rain or earthquakes, but by war, would have a major impact on humanitarian access, and in turn would be having a positive impact on the way the political process could be relaunched. So these meetings today are important, and we should be waiting for that outcome to be heard today. So I give the floor now to you, Stephen, for whatever you feel is important to say, including what we discussed today at the HTF. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, and good afternoon to everybody. And I am very pleased to have this opportunity to be here in Geneva and to be able to take part in the whole of the HTF meeting. And I'm deeply grateful to you, Staffan, for your hosting and indeed facilitation of that. In terms of the Syria crisis, a man-made humanitarian crisis, which we have to now see our way forward to trying to meet the needs, the incredibly large-scale and deep long-term needs of human suffering brought about by those continuing conflict circumstances, it was very clear that as the demands of humanitarians under the humanitarian principles of impartiality, independence and neutrality, we discussed how the UN and its implementing humanitarian partners are ready to be able to deliver for the people who have life-saving, life support and protection needs and continue to suffer under the current circumstances. So the readiness of the UN was affirmed. The detailed plans are in place with just the usual short-term notice of getting a green light, and then the reality of having trucks getting loaded, making sure that the truck drivers feel safe enough to be able to get in their cabs and to drive along secure routes to deliver to people in need was affirmed. And a very important point as we approach the solemn religious holidays of Eid, that the readiness was not affected by that, and that of course some adjustments would have to be made, but that we would make sure that the readiness was equally in place, even as the Eid holidays and certain arrangements are made for people to be able to make their proper celebration of that period. What is also clear from the HTF meeting, with all those engaged and from all the briefings, it was absolutely clear that the needs of the people in Syria, wherever these needs arise, however they arise, whoever it affects, on whichever side of any line or none at all, have become even more severe, not only over the 5 years, but actually even in the last 3 weeks. And therefore, the hope and wish for a comprehensive approach to the fight in Syria that would enable us to have the total humanitarian access was the paramount and necessary conditions that we need to get access. But also to recognise that in eastern Aleppo, the current situation remains extremely severe, to the point of it being a de facto besiegement. So much so that we need to make sure that we continue to demand, whatever the circumstances of the larger discussions, we need to make sure that we continue to press for and to demand a 48-hour weekly humanitarian pause to reach the people in need, by whichever route can be made secure for those very brave and courageous aid workers, both from within the UN and our implementing humanitarian partners, to reach the people in need. And as a result, the HCF this morning was able to look at these issues in some detail, and I was strongly encouraged by not only the continuing level of commitment to meet humanitarian needs, but also the readiness to do so if the circumstances permit.
Thank you. Well, in view of the fact that you're having Stephen O'Brien here, you will have more than 3 questions available, so by all means.
Thank you, sir. So I see we have some new faces, so let's start from left to right, please. Ahmed.
Thank you. I have 2 small
Loud
questions.
voice, Ahmed, please.
Yes,
huh?
yes,
Thank you.
sure. I have 2 small
بس
questions.
عرف عن حالك أحمد.
I'm Ahmed Shawi from the Egyptian TV.
أنا أعرف.
One question for Mr. O'Brien and the other for Mr. de Mistura. Mr. O'Brien, if we can have just an idea about the impact of the suspension of the 73 NGOs yesterday in Syria to work with the UN. And my question for Mr. de Mistura, we see this last hours another evacuation from the Mu'addamiyya for the civilian. I'd like to have your opinion about this second series of evacuation. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I came to know about this letter yesterday, and of course, these are from extremely important partners in the response that we are all able together with our common objective to meet humanitarian needs. Any concerns that are raised we take very seriously and with respect, but on the actual issues of what is contained in the letter, it is clear that there is a question about the planning and assessment process for 2017, and that we will continue to be working together for the implementation of humanitarian effect and taking the actions necessary to meet those needs. So there will be, and continues to be, a strong reaching out to our very important implementing partners, both by myself and indeed throughout the UN humanitarian team, and we'll continue to have those discussions. And I am sure that, above all, between us, there will be no impact on meeting the needs of those who are suffering through no fault of their own, and that we will be able to make sure our discussions are fruitful in generating the extra levels of confidence necessary to meet the frustrations, if there are any that have been articulated.
Thank you. On Mohadamia, we just did touch this aspect during the current HDF. We were in touch with our colleagues in the field, and I would be at this stage making very little comment. The only thing, because we are still watching and seeing what is actually happening. But what we understand, at least for the sake of explaining why I would not make comments at this stage, is that the people who appear to be evacuating are in fact not from Mohadamia, but they are the people in Daraya who ended up in Mohadamia temporarily. So for having a picture about Mohadamia, I would still wait for a moment, with your permission. Next point.
Thank you, sir. Catherine?
Yes, Catherine Fiampan-Bokonga, France 24.
Tout à fait.
Merci beaucoup. Two questions addressed to both of you. I would like to know if you have the intention to meet the two co-chairs, Mr. Lavrov and Mr. Kerry, not only for, of course, the political side, but we know that the humanitarian side is linked. So this is my question, if you're going to meet them today. Thank you.
I may be able to answer to that. The priority is for the two co-chairs to come up with an agreed position. That is where we would like them, and we are hoping that they will use all of their time. Then we meet them regularly, and we have been meeting. As you know, I met yesterday late for more than an hour Sergei Lavrov, and we are always available to help. But I would focus on that rather than whether we meet them or they meet us, but rather whether they meet together sufficiently to come up with a deal.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else from this side? Okay, John, please.
Yes, good afternoon. John Zarakostas with France 24 English channel and also with the Lancet. Mr. O'Brien, I was wondering if you have any views, sir, on the way forward for the opening of the route that is blocking supplies into Aleppo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you're referring to the Castella Road, which is obviously one that has been argued for as being the preferable route to get into eastern Aleppo. There is also the Suleiman Halabi crossing, which is another one. The latter is shorter. If you're looking at things like fuel costs, that would be preferable. But what matters is to actually look at what can gain the confidence of all the various parties, because in the end, access, which is our primary objective, access is dependent upon where we can go safely. And so whichever of those routes is possible to negotiate safely, and partly linked to the previous question of your sister French-speaking channel, it's clear that whether meeting or not, the message of this is absolutely at the forefront of the minds, whether it's at the senior-most levels of the discussions or at a more technical level. But the humanitarian imperative is unquestionably at the forefront of everybody's minds because of the dire level of needs and the urgency which we need to be able to secure safe routes.
Thank you, sir. Let's move to this side, please. CCTV. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shin from the National Television of China. Mr. de Mistura, I would like to ask you, what did you talk about with Mr. Lavrov last night, and what was the feeling that you got that make you say that you were looking forward to a positive outcome today? And also, what are the other preparations you have been doing as momentum seemed to be picking up? Are you talking to the opposition groups, the High Negotiation Committee, and the Syrian government? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I must compliment you for a very good try, frankly. And, no, because sometimes one is surprised by the audacious approach of saying whether I should be revealing the details of the discussion yesterday. You see, obviously, I'm not in a position at this stage to elaborate on what was discussed yesterday. What I can say, however, is that we did touch on the subject of humanitarian access, and we did discuss indeed what would be the role the UN should be playing if, as we all hope, there is a deal taking place today on the discussions between the two co-chairs. But I will not go in further details. Regarding the rest, we are in constant touch with everyone. That's exactly our job. So I've been in touch with the opposition, my colleagues are, and all different entities which are involved in the Syrian context. And as you know, at the General Assembly, there will be a further opportunity of meeting all the countries who are actually involved or can have an influence on it. That's our job. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Imogen, BBC.
But maybe primarily for Mr. O'Brien. We know that August was very difficult for delivering aid anywhere in Syria. How have things been going in September so far? Anything at all?
Thank you for the question. You're absolutely right. Not just August, but actually July was also extremely disappointing when you compare what was delivered to the agreed plan with the government of Syria. And then, as you know, once we have an agreed plan, however, it may be partially agreed compared to what we submitted as the UN. In September, what matters, just as it does in the previous months, is we have to convert the plans through facilitation letters. And it's at that point you can then load the trucks and set off on your path. Now, for September, the agreement to the partial acceptance of the plan as put forward by the government of Syria was received a week later than we would have liked. But once it was received, it does contain the partial agreements, which are very important for us to be able to make the progress. But that now means we need to get the facilitation letters in place, which is a combination of whether or not the circumstances of the particular populations and routes are troubled by continuing security concerns, or whether it's an administrative procedure and a burden that we need to overcome. We are making continuing supplies into Hasake, into the commercial area, by the air bridge. That is continuing, but the answer to your question is we're on the 9th of September, and the supplies under the September plan have not yet started other than that. So I wanted to put that in a proper context, which is why it's a slightly longer answer than I'd have liked, but to get to the point of none. Therefore, we have an even greater urgency and need to get those facilitation letters and the security in place so we can get the deliveries made. We need to do a lot better in September than was ever achieved, either August or July.
Thank you, sir.
I can add one point, if I may. We did hear from our field colleagues their genuine concern about Eastern Aleppo, because among all places which have been, of course, isolated, there is one or two which have been now not reached for more than 180 days. There is a growing concern about Eastern Aleppo. The issue about food, the issue about the possibility that within perhaps the next few days it will turn out to be dark because no fuel, problems of water. So regardless of everywhere is important, Eastern Aleppo is becoming an urgent issue, even more than before. But I will
that's absolutely right. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Let's take one last question,
Yes.
please, from Voice of America.
One more.
Yeah.
One more.
Okay, after me, yeah?
So one more where?
Here I am. Hello.
Yes, forgive me.
Lisa Schlein. No,
By all means.
No problem, no problem. A similar question. I want
Sorry.
Excuse
Go
me,
ahead,
can I ask
please.
my question? Thank you. I wanted to also ask a bit more about how the humanitarian access to besieged areas was going. I get the sense that you're not really delivering aid anywhere. You're bogged down in all kinds of bureaucratic, administrative stuff right now. So are any convoys moving to any of the humanitarian, to any of the besieged areas? Are medical evacuations not going on as far as you know? Are people dying in some of these areas because you cannot get the aid, you cannot move them out of their areas? I think you wanted to have about 1 million people, reach about 1 million people this month. How far away are you from that goal? Is that totally unrealistic?
I just jump 1 second inside just to qualify one point. When you're referring to bureaucratic aspects, I don't think you are fair on that, but it's a part of the question. All our difficulties at the moment are related to one single word, war. Increased in fighting, militarization of the conflict. So I give the floor to you.
Well, the straight answer to your question is, as I think I've just made clear, is that the convoys are not rolling at the moment in Syria, other than there's an air bridge. But we did get confirmation of evacuations yesterday, medical evacuations from Foya and Madaya. 11 from Foya, and I think it was 15 from Madaya. They're related to the meningitis outbreak, and we are now looking to get a date and to get an agreement as to how we pursue the further deliveries and evacuations under the Four Towns Agreement. But hopefully that can be put into a broader context as we move forward. That is why I make an absolute plea that we both have a cessation of the fighting, that the guns fall silent, because that is the best form of access. That is what is going to engage the confidence of all those who very bravely, as I referred to earlier, from the UN and our implementing partners, including NGOs, who are very bravely seeking to make the journeys to reach the people in need. But until we have the necessary assurances of that safety, which includes, of course, working with the government and indeed other parties to the current conflict, it's absolutely vital that we push that as hard as we can in order to deliver in September what has been agreed that we should deliver. But no, at the moment, there's very little rolling.
That's why it's so important to have cessation of hostilities, and that's why this meeting today is important, because it does make a difference on what is the humanitarian situation at the moment. Thank you very much. I know many other questions, but frankly, we have to stick to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.